Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. It's December 8th, 2023. It's hard to believe it's December already. All right. Our agenda this morning, we'll start out with success stories. I've heard of some people who've landed over the last 90 days, who I just found out about. We'll have everybody then put in their 30-second introductions. And for those here in the room, you'll be able to give your 30-second introduction live. We'll then talk about the practice interview team, the interview success workshop, the career tip of the week, and then our main event right around the top of the hour. For those on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just use the chat window. For those on Facebook, if you have any questions, just put those into the comment field. We are monitoring both feeds. We'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. This group started back in the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the leader of the group landed a job. In 2008, I saw a need and created a website called careerdfw.org. In 2012, I launched a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or I always have copies with me in person. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, also known as the PIC group, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Well, we'd like to start the meeting off with good news. Are there any landings out there? Anybody have landing news to share? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, I've heard of a few people, and so we talked about Linda last week, but over the last 90 days, we've had a number of people who landed. They disappeared from the group. I sent everybody an email. So Rob Lepper landed a job. He's a global strategic sourcing program director at West Pharmaceutical. Larry Jock got an engineering position at Collins Aerospace. Chandra Thomas landed as an administrative coordinator, but she didn't tell me where. Darlene Basile landed at McLean Food Services as account payable supervisor. And Rebecca Wolf just announced on Tuesday at Frisco Connect that she is got a learning and development job at AT&T. So those are number 42, 3, 4, 5, and 46 landings out of this group in the past this year. So still an opportunity for you to get on the list here. So don't stop working right now. Don't stop plugging away. You could be number 47, 48, 49. All right. Anybody else real quick before I move on? Okay. Well, what we'd love for everybody to do now is in the chat window for those on Zoom, please put in your name, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. I will take all this information and I will put it out into an email this afternoon. I'll actually just list your name and your target companies, because all the details, phone, email, will all be listed on the roster, which you'll get a copy of the roster. The roster's got 3 pages. The first page are those active members. The second page are those people who have landed a job. And then the third page are those people that we've lost contact with over the last, the roster goes back to like 2006 or 7. So there's people on there from a long, long time ago. So if you will, go ahead and put your information in. I'll put 30 seconds on the clock and we'll get started here. All right, if you're still putting your information in, that's great. Please continue to keep typing away there. All right, what we're going to do now is for everybody who's here in the room with us, we're going to allow them an opportunity to give their 30-second introduction. live. It'll be here online here. Let me switch cameras around so y'all can see. You can't quite see everybody here in the room, but you'll at least be able to see some of the people that are here. So here, I'll.
Good morning. I'm Jim Parker, electrical engineer. Have great communication skills, and I spent most of my career in technical sales and marketing. I've been involved in project management, product design, sales, marketing, work easily across departmental lines. I can speak to any business or technology level with the customer. I excel at jobs where I wear multiple hats, and I'm looking for a job in either technical sales or technical training. My name is Jim Parker.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla Hollis. I do project management and quality servicing. I provide solutions and help develop individuals as an individual contributor, and I'm also a team leader and a team player. My passion, again, is quality servicing. I need contacts at Small Business Administration, the federal office in Fort Worth. I also need contacts for the city of Irving and the city of Fort Worth. My name again is Priscilla Hollis.
Good morning, everybody. My name is William McLaughlin, currently seeking a data analyst role. I help do the research necessary for companies to make informed data-driven decisions that will help them improve their bottom line. I'm currently looking for contacts at NTT Data in Sedgwick. Again, my name is William McLaughlin. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Saunders. I'm a healthcare executive with an operations and finance background. I help companies grow revenue, most recently by creating a robotic assisted surgical program. I'd like to get contacts at SCA, HCA, UT Southwestern, or Parkland. My name is Jonathan Saunders.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Archery. I'm a senior retail manager / merchandiser. I help companies grow profit and sales in a very creative way. Again, Anthony Archery.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, you're welcome here. For those who are online, you're welcome to come join us in person. We're here every Friday. All right. Let me turn that camera off for a second. Spotlight. Here we go. All right. Now we're back in the right spot. So many things to touch here. If you know somebody who's unemployed, there are 2 websites out there that are totally free. They don't collect any personal information. Both Career DFW, Career USA, 2 websites that I started. This is not the Friday group of the North Dallas. This is not the Friday group of Career DFW. The fact that I happen to lead Career DFW and this North Dallas group, that's sort of beside the point. But if you know somebody who's unemployed, somebody recently unemployed, somebody's unemployed for a long time, one of the things that you will find on the careerdfw.org website is a bunch of calendars. And on those calendars, you'll see job fairs in pink, special workshops in gold. The blue meetings, the blue sessions there, those are meetings that are meeting in person. You can click on any one of those and find out what's going on. All the purple, those are all sessions that are happening online. So if you know of something that's happening in the area, please let me know. If you find that the group no longer exists, please let me know so I can update it. In fact, I heard there's a new group starting in January. So I hope to I'll have them up on the calendar here in the next week or so. All right, let me talk a second about the practice interview team. Your resume, your LinkedIn profile will not get you a job. All they do is they get you a phone call. How well you practice your interviewing skills, that's what's going to get you your next job. So coming to the practice interview team, it's totally free. We don't know of anybody else in the DFW area who's offering the service. It's all free. Their motto is practice early, practice often. Okay, practicing once isn't going to be enough, and you need to practice 3 or 4 times to really make this, to really be an effective interviewer. And as I've seen people over the years, I've been doing this since 2017, you see people improve when they come back the second time, the third time. They really get comfortable doing what they're doing, and that's the whole key. If you're interested, send a resume and a job description and your schedule 1 week out. what you're available to do the following, 5 to 7 days, send it to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com and they will get you scheduled online. The pit crew is also meeting in person on the first and third Wednesdays. So last Wednesday we met in person. In 2 weeks, we'll meet in person. Next Wednesday will actually be online. And then starting in January, the pit crew is going to meet first, second, and third week in person, and only the fourth week will be an online session. The interview success workshop, Walt's not with us. He had shoulder surgery about 8 days ago. He's doing well, but he likes to help people in their interviewing skills. His whole, his method is, interviewing with confidence. He wants you to learn how to sell who you are, what you do, and how you can help a company. And that's the real biggie. Everybody knows who, you explain who you are, you explain what you do. How well do you explain to somebody how you can help them and to be in that mindset? So it's a totally free workshop. You can do that. If you scan that QR code, it'll start an email. Just fill in the blanks that tell him you're interested in doing it. He does it on Tuesday mornings, usually from 9 to 11 Central Time. And he can do other sessions. I know he didn't do any this week, but he may get back to it doing next week. If you want more information, you can look him up on LinkedIn, Interview Success Workshop with Walt Glass. It's totally free, and all the information you need is right there on his profile. All right, career tip of the week. Every week there's a brand new career tip on the Career DFW and careerusa.org website. Rosanna's with us and she's going to read this week's tip. Good morning, Rosanna.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. All right, well, welcome to a new week. All right, hang on one second. All right, so this week's tip of the week is dated December the 3rd, 2023, and it's what good listeners have in common. This article is by Jim Vanderhoff. He's the author of Axios Finish Line. So few glitches in our species are more annoying and baffling than our inability to just listen. I'm talking about sitting quietly with an open mind, unburdened by selfish or defensive mind spans, and soaking up what the other person is actually saying. Why it matters? This isn't a rant about crack-like phone addiction or gnat-sized attention spans. It's an attempt to help us, me very much included, to hear not what we want to hear, but what others are saying. Imagine the relationships saved, productivity gained, clarity achieved, if we could better use our goofy-looking ears. I'm blessed with a few good listeners at work, including Mike Allen and Allison Murphy, our SVP of Operations. And I picked their brains for some tricks for upping up our listening game. So there are 7 tips that are listed here, and we'll start with the first one, which is think first. Good listening starts before the conversation, Allison advises. Are the objectives clear? Is it about problem solving, venting, engaging data, brainstorming? If it's not clear, ask, what do you need from me in this conversation? Second, put a sock in it, confidently. Think about any meeting or group dinner. Usually the person running their mouth isn't the person with the most power, the most interesting life, or the most to say. Are you selling something? Asking for a raise? Trying to impress a first date? You'll get to yes in the time that the other person is talking, not when you are. Third, clear the clutter. It's impossible to listen if you're fiddling with your phone, staring at your computer, daydreaming, or simply pretending to care or listen. You need to lock in to have a fighter's chance of hearing. Your teacher was right. When you're talking, you're not learning. Fourth, stop self-obsessing. No one thinks you're smarter when you're babbling or filibustering or self-indulging. No one feels heard if your version of listening is silently crafting your clever comeback while they talk. This is the original sin of crappy listening, so stop committing it. Fifth, savor silence. One of the oldest tricks in the book for a great interviewer is being willing to endure silence. This is what Mike says, and he practices. Don't yield to our human impulse to just jump in and fill in the awkward pause with your random words. Let the other person fill the silence. What you'll learn is priceless, and you can think about what you really want to say based on what they really said. Sixth, monitor for repeats. If someone is repeating themselves, Alderson explains, it is because it is first, really important, and or second, they don't think you're hearing them. Call it out. You've mentioned X a number of times. Can you say more? And then seventh, then listen truly and intently. Allison often ends a discussion or meeting by saying, "What I hear you saying is." This is a masterful way to show that you're listening and to make sure you heard with precision what the other person was saying, it was trying to convey. Don't leave space for fogginess. Don't force clarity and understanding. This article is the tip of the week for this week, and it's again dated December the 3rd, 2023, and it's what good listeners have in common. Hope you enjoy the tips. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody.
Thank you very, very much. All right, today, come join us for lunch. We're going to go to Country Burger, 3115 West Parker Road. You got to have lunch. Join us today, 11:45. It's on the northwest corner of Parker and Independence. They have burger, salad, and more. If you'd like this particular hamburger that's there in the picture, it's about $35, but you do need to bring your own ham slices. That's the only thing they don't have to put on that burger for you. But if you want it, you'll need to print this out and tell them this is what you're looking for. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to hear from Locke Alderson to talk about what recruiters look for on resumes. I just want to mention next Friday, our speaker will be Susan Holly. She's a senior tax advisor from Block Associates, H&R Block. She's going to talk about your 2023 taxes, what you need to think about before the end of the year. Holly, for the last 10, 11 years, has been our final speaker of the year. The event will not be recorded. H&R Block does not allow the presentation to be recorded. So if you do need to watch it, please let me know. If there's any tax questions you have that you'd like to ask, please email them to me before Wednesday. I'll put it in the email I put out this afternoon to everybody. But if you have any questions, send them to me before Wednesday so I can get those to her so she can research them and talk about them during her session next Friday. And then on Friday, December 22nd, meeting or no meeting, that'll be a decision that I guess we'll make next Friday if people want to come. I'm willing to be here, but if everybody says, nope, let's take off because Christmas is on Monday, we will take off that week. And then we'll be gone the following week, the Friday between Christmas and New Year's. We will not meet. Our next meeting will be back on January 5th, I believe, which is the first Friday in January. All right, it's time to hear from Locke Alderson. So it's interesting. Locke will be our first speaker to ever be in this group since COVID started. I mean, after COVID started coming back, all of our speakers have been on Zoom and stuff, but Locke is with us in person here. So yes, thank you, Locke. And give me just a second and I'll get his presentation up and going here. So give me a second. There's that one. Share. There we go. And I'll let you sit here. And all you do is just right here to advance to the next slide. Hit that arrow. And if you want to go back, you go to this one. But you got to hold the mic.
Thanks, Jeff. Ironically, it's been almost a year since I did this presentation, and it's for your group, whether you know it or not.
Oh, really?
And echoing that, Jeff's a hard act to follow. He did resumes yesterday, so I'll try and present something new. Again, the highlights that we have here, that's my bio up there on the screen. 42 years in recruiting and HR kinds of activities, and 22 years in career consulting with companies like Lee Heck Harrison and Mullen International. I had done this as a volunteer starting in 2001. We're scheduled to start on 9/11, but you know what happened that day. So we postponed a week for my church, and I think I did 15 8-week sessions for them as well. So that's my bio. If you want a copy of today's presentation, my email address is down there at the bottom. Okay, one of the things about me, if you don't know me already, I look to scripture for encouragement. Some of those times when I've been unemployed, that's what I do, and that's what I try and do every day. This is a verse from Jeremiah in the Old Testament. I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So that's one of those things that I look at on a daily basis to try and encourage me as I start the new day. So in an ideal world, you wouldn't need a resume. However, most of us live in a real world. So we need a resume to communicate with one another. So what are resumes used for? Again, the thing that we have there, why even have a resume? What's it used for? Well, one of the things it's used for, if nothing else, and I teach these job readiness skills to an English as a second language class on a regular basis, is just a list of your jobs and employers. So if you're asked to fill out an employment application, you have all those things on a simple sheet of paper. And it's just basically that kind of information. The next thing that you want to do, think about advertising. How many of you still get credit card applications in the mail? What do you do with most of them? Well, if you're like I am, most of them either get torn up or just simply thrown away. I tear them up and throw them away just to be safe. But again, that piece of advertising is what's prompting somebody to give you a call. As Jeff said, you don't get hired off your resume. I only know of a couple of people in my 42 years of recruiting experience that have actually been hired off their resume. So the next thing that is script for an interview. It used to be you go for a face-to-face interview and somebody would look at your resume, they'd look at the first page, they'd look at the second page, and then back at the first page. And they typically will ask you questions off the information you provided. So that's one of the things that you want to have. So you want to know what's in that script so that you'll have the right answers. The next thing that you want to have, it's a reminder after the interview of who you are. I know when I had my own recruiting firm, I had a candidate interview for a sales engineer job. Manager interviewed 40 people in the first round. How anybody can remember 40 people, I don't know. But unless he kept copious notes on the edges of the resume, and that's one of the reasons we suggest that you leave an inch margin all the way around, and so that managers can do that. But my candidate got to the second round of 5 candidates before the job got canceled. The next thing that you want to have, what should be included and what's to be excluded in your resume. One of the things that you want to have is a headline. Basically, a headline is the job title of the position you're applying for. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that you need to have, because if it's not there, like in LinkedIn, if it don't have a headline in your LinkedIn profile, it's going to default to your last job title, and that may not be what you're looking for. You need to have a summary. It's your branding statement of who you are, what you do, and what you've done, along with short examples to support your headline. And we'll go into more detail about that in a minute. Okay, let's talk about some assumptions about resume writers, okay, that are wrong. They overestimate the power of the resume. They think that they could put everything in the resume and that's enough to get them hired. We've already said, don't know too many people who've been hired off their resume. The next thing, they assume the resume actually gets read. 75, 80% of the resumes that you send out via the intermail or to a job board are processed by a computer. They may not even get to see a human set of eyes. So again, that's an assumption that people make. They underestimate the number of resumes received for consideration of a posting. Jeff and I have a friend, Gail Houston, who when she was at EDS, she posted a job for a project manager. She had 300 responses to that posting in the first hour before she took the resume down. Overestimate the qualifications of the people looking at the resume. Sometimes the people, after it gets through the applicant tracking system, it may be screened by a clerk in HR, a recruiting assistant. Again, and sometimes recruiters really don't understand what the hiring managers look for. So that's one of the assumptions you make that you have to be careful about. They include the wrong content or assume one size covers all. You know, the cookie cutter type resume where you could print 50 of them at FedEx office and take them and hand them out to people. Doesn't apply anymore. You have to customize your resume, even if it's just a little bit by changing the title of the job. That's one of the things that you do, and people that don't do that are likely to get excluded from jobs. And the assumption that the reader will understand the content. Again, I mentioned recruiters who have never done the job. They've just gotten a job rec or a job posting requirement, and that's all they have to go about in terms of understanding the job. But they may not be understanding what the day-to-day activities are for that job. And they assume more is better rather than less. So I've seen resumes that are 7 and 8 pages long. Usually it's two pages if you have experience. Maybe if you're 1 page, if you have a new grad. Longer resumes are usually required for things like professors and academic positions. Next thing we want to look at is things that the recruiters don't look for in resumes. They don't look for vague content. They like specifics. Too much information, like you're married and have 2 children. I work with the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. Those are important things to you, but they may or not be important to the recruiter or hiring manager. The next thing that's important are some things like kiss of death phrases. These phrases, if you use them, are probably about you and they're probably true, but without additional information, they're kiss of death. Results oriented, passionate self-starter. If you don't give an example of how you're results oriented, what were some of the results that you achieved? Self-taught, I don't want a surgeon who's self-taught. Sorry, I just don't. Okay. Strategic thinker, high energy. High energy is good for the athletic field, but maybe not for an office job. So those are some things that are kiss of death phrases. There's some also kiss of death words. Same thing, dynamic, utilized, decisive, powerful. These words, again, are probably true. LinkedIn encourages them to use them as part of your headline now. So you can amplify your headline. LinkedIn is a little bit different than your resume. Using the first person, I, me, my. Jeff mentioned that yesterday in his presentation. That's kind of another kiss of death. We talk about us in the third person as a rule. Words that blunt your experience. Every, all, none. These are words, again, that says all the time, and none of us are perfect. I only know of one person that was perfect, and we're celebrating the Christmas season. He was crucified on a cross. Words that recruiters rarely search for. I have never, as a recruiter, searched for jack of all trades. I've never searched for entrepreneur, owner, franchise, as operator. Those are words as a recruiter, I've never used in a search requirement. So let's move on to the next one. If you have 100 recruiters, you may have 100 different opinions. Okay. There's one perfect resume. Yes, that's right. There's one perfect resume. It's the one that you like and gets you the results that you want. So if somebody's giving you advice about your resume, listen to who they are and what's their background. Are they a recruiter? Are they a job hunter? Are they a job consultant or career consultant? And take their perspective. If their advice makes sense, use it. If it doesn't, ignore it. Even if it makes sense to use it, try it. If it doesn't work, go back to what you were doing. Another verse of scripture, as we talk about all the negatives that I've got, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. That him is Christ. Again, getting rid of your anxiety is something that I need to do, particularly when I get ready to go for an interview. Again, you're looking for resumes that get recruiters' attention. First thing that I can tell you on that is the headline needs to match the job title. Again, the applicant tracking systems looks for as many matches on the fields in the resume as are in their field and that's in the database. Headline is one that's there. Skip an objective. People don't really care about your objective. Okay, they care about their objective, which is to fill the job with somebody who can hit the ground running, has all the experience and qualifications being sought. You want to limit your summary to 3 to 6 lines, maybe 2 to 4 sentences. Anything more won't get read. You want to keep them short, and you want to follow that up with a couple of bulleted accomplishments. And the reason that I say this is recruiters look at resumes. They spend 6 to 10 seconds and look at their resume. And that bulleted resumes under your summary and your job title, those are the first things that they see when they open up a resume online. It needs to be visually appealing and easy to read. Resumes that are crowded, 8-point or 7-point font are too hard to read. I can always click Control A and expand those on my screen, but when they're printed out, they're very difficult to read. Word keywords and skills. Think of word saturation. If you use a word once in a resume, I posted a job for Siebel when I was Siebel Corporation. When I moved over to Oracle, they bought Siebel. I posted a job for a Siebel consultant in Minneapolis. I got 75 responses. It was a pretty good response rate for a job posting. And of those, 50 didn't even have the word Siebel in their resume. They got into the reject pile. I might come back to them later if I can't find anything in the 25 that had Siebel. Now, for those that had Siebel in their resume, some of them just had it once. Might be a Siebel user since it's an application software. Somebody that had it 5 or 10 times is probably what I'm looking for because they may have installed Siebel as a software product, which is really what I was looking for. So make it the kind of thing that the keywords that are there more times that are available. Limit your duties and responsibilities to 5 lines. I know I've gotten a lot of resumes when I was looking for software consultants. They'd work project work and they list a 1 page per project and all the details about that project. That's okay for those kinds of jobs. But for other jobs, 3 or 4 lines is about as much as people are going to read. Again, follow it up with a couple of bulleted accomplishments. What shows what you accomplished in that particular position performing those duties. And the implication is, this is what I've done for my employers, and that's what I can do for you. Some resume basics. Let's talk about some resume basics. The format, again, is one of the important things that you want to talk about. And the big deal about real estate I've already mentioned is 1 to 2 pages usually is enough. Maybe 2.5, but again, nothing longer than that. We have a mutual friend in Dirk, and his resume, if you've ever read it, is 7 pages. And I've read it because it's an interesting resume and it's on point. But most of us don't write that well. Most of us don't know how to write a resume of 7 pages that's actually going to get read. So the format is vitally important. Okay. No fancy fonts. And again, by fancy fonts, there's a font. If you looked on your font at the toolbar at the top with fonts, this is Wingding. I used to get resumes in Word. If somebody had Word 10 on their computer and I had Word 7, this is what the resume would look like when I got it. So I learned finally that I can do a Control-A and switch that, highlight the whole document, and go up and switch it to something like Arial or something of that type. But at that time, I had to go to my wife and take this recruiter to her. She had Word 10 on her computer at work, and she would translate it for me. So again, I use that as a kind of a humorous example. But again, this actual resume was 7 pages in Wingding. Okay. Real estate, as I mentioned, is about 2 pages. Let's talk about format. Again, Jeff mentioned yesterday some of the formats that are acceptable. The ones that I mentioned there, Arial, Tahoma, Calibri, Times Roman, are the ones that are most readily recognized by applicant tracking software. There are about 100 different applicant tracking software packages out there. Some will recognize all of the software that's out there that you have, and some will not. Some of these fonts. So choose the ones that are easily recognizable. Jeff included a few others in his presentation yesterday. Okay. I mentioned that the margins all around, left, right, top, bottom, have an inch margin. I like left justified as opposed to right, and ragged right as opposed to centered or proportional spacing. Again, it makes it easier to read. The other thing is limit your use of bold, italics, and underlines. Occasionally, you can use those to highlight some experience or things that you're calling attention to. You also want to have a resume that's scannable. And what do I mean by that? The applicant tracking system is just basically a scanner. It's like if you're going to scan a document, you want it to be recognized. The same thing applies to job boards because they too have some kind of tracking software. That's like an applicant tracking system. Email does the same thing. Jim?
Can ATS system scan a PDF document?
Yes. I say that yes, but again, I still recommend a Word format. Because remember, I mentioned there are 100 different software packages out there. You don't know, even if they've had the Cadillac of word processing, applicant tracking systems like Taleo, whether they've turned on that they'll recognize PDF files. So the safest way to do it is either in Word or save your resume as a text file and send it that way. So those are the ways to do that. And the text file is not mentioned there. Continuing with resume basics, don't use text boxes, headers, or templates. Again, I mentioned the applicant tracking software. Some of those don't recognize things. No, it's very frustrating as a recruiter to have somebody have their contact information in a header, and because the applicant tracking system treats the header as a null file, meaning 0, You see nothing when you pull it up on your applicant tracking system when I open that database. So it's very frustrating as a recruiter to have a great resume for a candidate who appears to be able to do the job, and I can't get hold of them. And likewise, as an applicant, you might be frustrated that you aren't hearing anything. Well, ever consider that you haven't provided anybody a way to get hold of you. That's one of the frustrations that you have. I mentioned the contact information. Make it easy for the recruiter to reach out to you. Again, this is one of the things I looked at a gal's resume. She's a recruiter. I looked at her profile yesterday. She has no phone number, even though we're direct connections in her resume. It's not in her contact information. I need to call her again and tell her about that. But the things that you want in your contact information, your phone numbers, your email, your LinkedIn URL, and your city, state, and zip code. Again, we don't care about your personal street address. That's not as important anymore. The headline is important, and you want it to have a laser focus. The reason being, that's one of those things that the recruiter looks for. That's one of those things that the applicant tracking system looks at. The summary we mentioned, you want to have concrete examples. Again, you can talk about your duties and responsibilities, but give concrete examples to support them. Skills table. If you have a technical background, for the engineers, what have you done that's technical? You can come up with a table, a list of the things that you've done, particularly for computer people. I like to know what computer system they've worked for, what kind of hardware, what kind of application software, if they've worked with different operating systems. Those are things as a recruiter I would look for. Next thing we want to look at, formatting your experience. The company name and location on the left, and the dates out to the right. This is me and a personal preference. They can be anywhere they want to, but generally on the first line. If the company's not well known, Jeff mentioned this yesterday, have a tagline, one line, that explains what the company did. When I came to Texas in 1976, I worked for a company called Mostec. They went out of business in 1983. Okay. At the time, they were the world's leading producer of random access memories. So that gives a short description of what the company did so that the recruiter can understand. He's got a background in the semiconductor industry. The job title and responsibilities, I've mentioned that already. Keep the descriptions to about 1 to 4 lines. If it's longer than that, you need to cut it down and edit it. Recent relevant experience. Again, if your experience is not relevant, and yes, COBOL is still being used, even though the last recruiting assignments I had for that were back in about 2000. Again, you can still put that, but relevant information, because it's what you've done for me lately is what's important. There used to be an advertisement about that on television. Accomplishments. Again, those are the things that you've done. What were the results of performing your duties? What was the significance of those duties? Again, without it, those things can be viewed as fluff. Keywords, use them more than once. I've already mentioned that. Education, certification, and awards. A lot of the resumes that I look at simply talk about when somebody got their first degree. They haven't talked about what they've done to keep their technology or their skills current. So you want to list any professional development, any continuing education course that you have, but also list the certification and awards that you've received. Omit references, omit pictures. The only exception to pictures, if you're a model or an actor, yes, those are both correct, politically correct for male and female today. Those include pictures, headshots, if you will. Because I know when I was with Continental Airlines, I used to get stacks of resumes that included somebody's picture when we were looking for flight attendants. Again, those tended to get set aside because we didn't want to be accused of discrimination based on somebody's picture. Use the spell checker and grammar. There's one word like manager. If you leave a letter out, it becomes manger. That's particularly appropriate this time of the year. There are other words like that. Double check the numbers and dates. I have a tendency to transpose numbers when I type. So make sure that your phone number is correct, because if it isn't, that's going to be a reason that you aren't getting calls. That's a reason that the recruiter can't reach you. I dialed somebody in my phone directory in my cell phone. I had a wrong number for somebody I was trying to get hold of, and I couldn't reach them. I finally went back and looked at their connection online and dialed the correct number, but that's vitally important. And one spelling error can eliminate a person's resume. And resumes tend to get ignored if you can't get hold of them with the email address. Okay. Another thing that you need to be aware of is to be honest. There's too much information about you out there on the internet. that they can check on you. I've had applicants that have filled in a resume and filled in an application. They said they had a degree. They were 2 courses short, and because our company said any misstatements in your application was grounds for disciplinary action up to and including termination. I had to walk the gentleman to the door, and that was unfortunate. He was a minority candidate, helped me in my affirmative action goals. But again, we still had to walk him to the door because he said that he was short 2 courses on his degree. Had he been honest about it, we would have hired him anyway. But we asked the question, if he'd been dishonest about one little thing, what else is he not telling us the truth about? So that's something to be aware of. The resume black hole. If anybody has ever encountered that, that's something that, again, your resume goes into it and you send it off and you never hear anything. They call it ghosting, is the latest term I've heard for something like that. But you might want to ask why. Well, one of the reasons that you do that is companies get flooded with resumes. Google alone gets 20,000 resumes a week. Do the numbers and the math, that's over 1 million resumes a year. And they probably hire about 10,000 people, if that, in today's economy. So that's one of the things that you need to be aware of. Just some resume statistics. You have a good resume and you're not getting any results. Why? Well, each time somebody sees a posting, you might have 200 people who see a posting and says, that looks good. 100 people of them say, I'm going to take the time and submit a resume. 75 of them don't make it through their applicant tracking system. They end up in the B pile. The 25 might get reviewed by a real person. Of those, maybe 5 or 10 get actual phone interviews, and 3 to 5 may get, used to be face-to-face interviews, but they may get a Skype interview or online interview at some time, and 1 gets an offer. My statistics were, I had an 80 to 85% acceptance ratio of candidates made it to the offer stage. So that's some of the things that just to be aware of. Those are the statistics, and they tend to be stacked against you, just like the odds at the gambling casinos. Okay. Some other tips for getting your resume considered. If you don't match 75 or 80% of the qualifications listed in the job postings, don't apply, because you're not going to get accepted. You're thinking, and I have, remember the 50 that applied for my job in Minneapolis for a Siebel consultant? They might have considered, well, Siebel's a big, Oracle's a big company. And they have a big office here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They must have 500 employees. They've got to have other jobs. And I'm sure this recruiter is going to refer my resume on to them. Well, I got news for you. The recruiter's looking to fill his jobs, because if he doesn't, he's going to be out there looking for a job. The next thing, do respond to postings within 72 hours. Again, I'll even correct that and say within less than that, within 24 hours. Some jobs that are unusual and hard to fill, maybe 2 a week or 2. Again, a health and safety engineer with environmental experience, those are hard jobs to fill. I work with a candidate out of somewhere in Arkansas, a town up there. We looked for jobs for him in Arkansas. There were no other jobs open. So we opened it up to the Southwest and found him about 4 jobs. Okay. But we opened up the spigot and said, okay, I'll consider anything within the last 90 days, because those jobs, candidates for those jobs are hard to find. Scannable resume, we mentioned. Optimize your resume. Think about it when you might have bought a suit. For us guys, if my suit is too long in the legs, they're going to have the pants taken up. If it's too tight in the waist, I'm going to have them let out the waist a little bit. Ladies, I understand you do the same thing and let some skirts out or take the hem up, again, to be fashionable. So tailor your resume to each application that you're sending out. Again, don't put your contact information in the header. Try alternate delivery systems. What do I mean? If you're trying to do it online, send it in snail mail. Send it as a registered letter or a FedEx envelope. Somebody has to sign for those registered letters and FedEx envelopes. So it's likely that it's going to actually get read by somebody, maybe somebody like the recruiter or the hiring manager. And become an employee referral. What do I mean? Employee referrals are typically get a bonus. They have employee referrals. When I first went to work at Siebel, since we weren't a very well-known company, we paid $2,500 for one of those Siebel consultants if they lasted 90 days. We had one employee that had 6 referrals. He had $15,000 added to his paycheck, less taxes, of course. This is actually a picture of my resume. You notice at the top, my name. I've got Plano, Texas, my email address, my telephone number. Again, that's a current phone number. I changed it. Okay. And I have a title up there. Again, I was looking for career transition or recruiting positions. If it was a specific position, I'd narrow that down. But notice underneath there, at the bottom, underneath my summary, there's 2 bulleted accomplishments. For career transition, I work with 500 or 450 candidates. 300 of those I know got jobs. Now, whether they got jobs through my efforts or on their own, I don't know, but they counted toward my statistics. So that's important. I was a speaker at career transition workshops. I was a speaker at groups like that, a career transition workshop up in Frisco, at Stonebriar Community Church. Over the years, we had about 19,000 people attend those workshops. So those are the kind of things that get people's attraction. Again, the notice that above the professional experience, that's what people look at in the first time that they see your resume. Some more tips for taking a look at your resume. One of the things that I don't see, and anybody else I've seen do resume presentations, how do you do that? You cut apart the job posting. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, prepare a table, identify the job requirements, and put them in a table. The left column is going to have the company name and what are the requirements. The right column is going to have your experience. Your experience and how your experience matches up to those things. Well, let's take a look at that on the next slide. This is an actual job posting for a candidate I was working with Lee Heck Harrison, and he was looking for a job at DXC Technologies, which used to be over there at Renner and Central, although their signage on the building has come down, so they have disappeared. Okay, the education requirements are listed there at the bottom. So what I suggested that he do was to create a table. Again, the left column, the company name, and what were their requirements. The right column lists his experience, and again, it matches there. Then you can extract some of those things on the right column, how his experience matches up, included in his resume. Okay, he changed the title. I'm sorry, Jeff. Okay, on the online. The global sales executive was the title of position. So we pulled that off of the job requirements, off the job posting. And the 3 bulleted items there below are how his experience matches up to some of the requirements that they listed. You can use that same job requirements table. If you ever get a phone interview, and most of the job interviews today start with a phone interview, you want to have your resume on the desk, you want to have the job posting, and you want to have a job requirements table. The job requirements that you've listed there as your experience will give you an opportunity to start to tell stories. Okay, you've listed some facts there. They're the basis for something that you've done. And most of us can elaborate at least a little bit on what we've done, how we've accomplished things. So that's very helpful in using that for something else. Can also be used as part of a table letter. Cover letters usually have 3 sections. The first section is where you found the job or how you found out about it. Second section is how your experience matches up. It's usually in sentences and paragraphs. The third section is, let's get together and talk about your requirements and my experience. I'll contact you next week to schedule something mutually convenient for both of us. I've had those sections. The middle section, one person who had a marketing communications job, her middle section of her cover letter was 5 paragraphs. Jeff is shaking his head. He knows, because most of us know those don't get read. It's like your email when you get it in the morning. If you're like I am, 75% of my email gets rejected. I look at the subject line, the sender line, and make a decision to keep or to read it. Some more tips. I mentioned keywords appear in the job posting. That's very important. Again, probably the number one, that and skills are the number one thing that recruiters look for. Include accomplishments, the measurable results of performing your duties, add credibility to what you've done. Focus on getting their hands into the hands of the hiring manager. I'll get it right yet. Okay. Use LinkedIn to find out who the hiring manager is. Do a research or call the receptionist or the switchboard at a company and ask, well, who's handling the recruiting for, the accounts payable positions, or who handles accounts payable? Okay. Become an employee referral because they get a bonus. Okay. And those referral resumes, recruiters usually take a little bit harder look at them because they have to give an answer to the person who referred it. Or when I was with Siebel, got referral from Tom Siebel's office that would trickle down. We didn't have to hire those people, but we had to be prepared to give an answer. Was this a qualified candidate or not? If it was qualified, we'd better go ahead and schedule some type of interview with a candidate. Competing with the purple squirrel. Purple squirrel is that mythical character, if you will, And there was a magazine for recruiters back in the early 90s. Purple Squirrel is looking for the perfect candidate, all the right experience and all the number of years, the education that they're looking for. But they're almost impossible to find, and they work for peanuts. That's what the hiring manager was looking for. When I encountered that from a hiring manager, I frequently get, so, you know, I'm still looking for one of those. I've found a couple of candidates for you that come close. Would you take a look at them while I continue to look for your perfect candidate? And more often than not, they'd review the 2 or 3 that resumes that I'd sent to them and find 1 or 2 to actually interview. And guess what? They got hired. So that's the purple squirrel. Big deal about achievements. I mentioned and talked about that before. This is just a sheet to talk about that. What was the situation, the action taken, and the results? It's also called the STAR. I can't remember what the acronym for the STAR is, but those are a number of those like that. Task, okay. Start with an active verb, and you want to keep them to 1 or 2 lines, okay? The things that are there, where do you find those things? What have people said about you in your performance appraisals, your LinkedIn recommendations? Okay, wherever possible, use dollars or percentages to convey impact, okay? And if it's 1M, most of us know what 1M stands for, is 1 million, but spell it out with a 0. It has a bigger impact on our brains. Use before and after comparisons. I did this, my predecessor did that, okay? And this is how it's improved. Did it make money or save money? Because sometimes you don't have dollars or percentages, but if it improved something, that's a way to talk about that. Did it expand business, attract customers, or did it keep customers? Because the biggest thing for customers and customer success stories is they want to retain customers because it's cheaper to retain a customer than to go out and solicit a new one. All the effort and time and effort there. So you ask yourself about your accomplishments. So what? What's the significance of this? What's the rest of the story? What's the impact of this? What resulted? Just some things that are available to you to think about when you talk about accomplishments. Again, let's take a look at some resumes now. This is a chronological resume. And most of the resumes that I've ever looked at as a recruiter, 95% of them, and yes, it's over 1 million resumes that I've probably reviewed in 42 years, were reverse chronological resumes, talking about your most recent experience and working back. You want to generally limit that to about 10 to 15 years. And usually in that time frame, there's a break where you've been promoted or changed jobs. So that's a natural break. Any prior experience that you think is relevant, listed under a category title, prior professional experience, list the title and the company, and don't list the dates. They do discriminate us against those old dinosaurs, okay? And you can list an accomplishment. If there was a particular accomplishment that you had at that company or for that organization, list it. But this is reverse chronological. Notice at the top, he's got a 3-line summary. He's got basically some skills, areas of expertise. He's got his experience, and under each of the job postings, which are short, 3 or 4 lines, he's got some accomplishments that he has there. Now that's just a reverse chronological resume. Let's take a look at another one. Some people in resumes have gone to what's called a bulleted format. That's okay. The only problem with a bulleted format is look at that resume and tell me which of the bullets do you want me to pay attention to? You've got 6 to 10 seconds. So in this case, I suggested to that candidate that he switch formats slightly again and break out what were his accomplishments. So he's listed 5 bullets and 4 accomplishments. That's one way to go about doing that. So that's a different type of resume, as you want, the all bullet resume format. Now, those of you that are thinking about switching career fields or have been out of the workforce for a while, this is a resume on a teacher. Again, she's got all the information, and the information is kind of squeezed to get it all on a slide. Okay, and information where she was a teacher in Louisville, Kentucky. Happened to live in Louisville when I was in elementary school. And so that's how I knew the Belknap Elementary School. Yes, I attended there way back when. And that she was a 3rd grade teacher, okay? But she wanted to get out of teaching. What had she done? So I suggested to her that she divide up her experience on a functional basis, okay? And we did it in terms of communications, administration, and sales. What had she done? What were her accomplishments in that area? Now, recruiters tend to hate functional resumes. And the reason they do is while they talk about what somebody has done, okay, their accomplishments, they fail to talk about who they did it for or what the dates were on that. So in this case, you want to list the employment history down at the bottom. But in this case, she has the different areas of expertise. She has a title now. Yeah, it's a little generic. She needs to tailor that if she's applying for a job. But if she's just meeting people, this might be okay. Customer relations, communications are public relations. Okay, so that's her resume and switching that. This kind of a resume is also appropriate for those who've been out of the job market for a while. What are the skills? And this is my functional resume, my hybrid resume. I talk about my areas of expertise. I'm looking for a recruiting manager, have a short summary. In this case, they were looking for somebody who'd had an MBA at a top business school in the country. And at that time, Cal was in that top end list on whoever's list you're looking like US News Report does an annual report of the top 10 business schools in the United States. Again, and then I could rotate. I had 5 areas of expertise: management and administration, recruiting and employment, training and development, compensation and benefits, employee relations. Those are all the others. And I can rotate them around. Those boxes can be rotated around. But that's the first thing that people see when they open up the resume. Okay. Management and administration as a recruiting manager. Yeah, you want to have managed people. Okay. Recruiting and employment. They want to know what you've done in that area. This was a technical firm, so they wanted that kind of information. Some other tips. I mentioned 75 to 80% don't apply for the job. Do apply early, within 72 hours or sooner. Have a scannable resume. Don't put your information in a header, contact information. Proofread your resume for typos and grammar. Having a headline is vitally important, because if they don't, I'm supposed to guess what you want to do for my company. Because if it doesn't have one on there, I may not be able to understand that. And think about it. I may be educated with an MBA, but somebody reading it may only have a high school education. The summary, again, should be short and be followed by some accomplishments. Dissect the job posting. I haven't seen that in too many presentations I've done on resumes. But again, take it apart. That's a way that allows you to customize your resume. And also use the keywords that are important. If you don't know what the keywords are, take a look at some of the job postings that you're applying for. It contains those keywords that are vitally important. And try alternate delivery system. Jeff, I'm about done. Just some last resume do's and don'ts. Use those keywords and phrases. Focus on your current job. That's the most relevant thing. That's what you've done most recently. That's likely to be the most valuable thing that you have to present. Use a reverse chronological resume. Quantify, add those accomplishments, okay, your achievements. Amplify what they are. Do sweat the small stuff, meaning pay attention to your phone number, your email address, make sure that they're correct. Don't neglect to have a summary. You want to have one. Don't assume anything. That dangerous word assume is in there, okay? Don't exaggerate. Don't lie on your qualifications. Don't share too much information, and don't include your references. If they're interested in your references, they're going to ask you for them. That's my email address down there at the bottom. If you'd like the slide deck, just send me an email at lockealderson@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to do it. Jeff, why don't we see if we have any questions? Turn it over to you.
All right. I know we had one question here. You have a question?
Yes, I had several questions, but first, Mr. Alderson, thank you very much. Oh, you go by Locke. All right. Locke, thank you so much. I felt that your delivery was very personable, and I just love the flow of the presentation. One of the questions I had is, when you're finding someone, whoever is the hiring manager, is that the way you post it, that if you can find who that person is, to address them on LinkedIn. And so can you give us a little bit more information on how to do that? And speaking about not giving too much information, you want to make contact, you want to say a little bit about what you can do for them. So can you address those two things, how we find it on LinkedIn, and what would the approach be in an email, or should we do snail mail?
Hold on. Can't talk.
On the search box on LinkedIn, that top box on LinkedIn that has a search box there, you can put in the company name, or you can go over to the jobs tab on the toolbar, the next toolbar down, and do a search for that job. Okay. You can also enter in the company name. And once you've done a job search, if you look over to the left, there's a drop down arrow next to the jobs. Okay. That drop down arrow, if you click on it, will allow you to go down to people or to companies. So you can do a company search, and then you can look for somebody who has maybe accounts payable, receivable, recruiting, hiring. Use the different words. If you're a professional, you should know the words in your profession. So look for the people that had that up. It's a vice president or a director, Talent management is a new terminology for recruiting. Okay. It's been around for, I guess, about 15 years anyway. So those are the ways that you find people. Then you can try and connect with them, send them an email. Found an opportunity on your company. I'd like to find out some more information about the company and about your position that you have open. Okay, that's one way to do it. You could do the same thing to try and find a recruiter. It may not be the right recruiter for the position, but it's possible that that recruiter can refer you over to the hiring recruiter. Okay, for that position. So that's a way to find. And yes, you want to keep it simple, not too much information. I'm reminded of the story. I'll tell a short story. It's pretty clean. Okay, but Johnny comes home from school and asks his mommy, he's 8. He asks his mom, where do I come from? Somebody wanting me to play bridge. Okay. Comes home from school, where do I go? She thinks, well, he's a little young, but maybe I should tell him now about birds and the bees. And she goes through and talks to him about the birds and the bees. And he says, no, Tommy's from Cincinnati. I want to know where I come from, mommy. Okay. So that's too much information. I do it a different way with different audiences, but that's okay to do it. But you want to keep it short and sweet. It's kind of like your 30-second presentation. That's kind of what you want to talk to people about, because all of us meet people in social settings, not just in job seeking. So what do? You know, what's your background? And you have an opportunity to tell them what your background is. And that's how we identify with people. You know, we identify people that we see on a regular basis. Oh, he's a recruiter, or he's a buyer. Okay. Or they like to play bridge, or that's a chess player or a mahjong player. Because I'm in a 55+ apartment community, and my wife likes to play mahjong, and I like to play bridge. So I'm looking for people who like to do that, or she's looking for people who like to play mahjong, or Mexican train, or hand and foot. People that like that. So you identify with people like that, and you put labels on people, but you want to keep the information that you give them short. If they want more information, they're going to ask you for more. Okay.
I want to add on that, you know, if you're looking to find somebody in a company, you go to LinkedIn, it's perfectly fine if you don't know who the recruiter is. Look for the recruiting supervisor, look for the recruiting manager, because if you send that application there and you can reach out to that person and you say, I can do this job, they may glance at your resume and then they'll usually push it down to wherever it needs to go. So even if you don't think it's, you're trying to find a hiring manager at a company, it's okay to shoot up a level or two, because they'll usually, especially if it comes from above, you'll always make that phone call.
Trickle down, you typically want to make that phone call.
Right. So it's nothing wrong with shoot a couple levels up or shoot a level or two up when you're trying to reach. And if you can't figure out who the person is, go to the manager or supervisor, because they'll push it down to where it needs to go. Anybody online have a question? You're welcome to unmute your mic and ask away. Any questions online? I didn't see any in the chat window. If you put any in the chat window, please let us know. Anyone? Oh, okay. Hold on.
Not so much a question as I want to comment, add on to some things that you mentioned. First is keywords. Keywords are important, but look at the job description and try to incorporate the keywords that they use in your resume. It's going to make it jump out a little bit more. The second thing is you're talking about the SAR or the star stories. Some people reverse that and they call it rats. You want to give the result first because you're going to grab the person's attention. Then you explain how you did it.
Anybody else? Any questions in here?
Yeah, hi. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. It was actually a follow-up question that Rosina asked in the chat, and that is that do cover letters get scanned in the same way that resumes do? I mean, do you have to pay as much attention to, keywords and that kind of thing in cover letters also?
Well, cover letters, just a basic fact about cover letters, 75 to 80% of them don't even get read. Most recruiters hate cover letters. They don't take the time to read them. They don't have time. I mentioned the lady that had 5 paragraphs in her middle section of her cover letter, so they don't get read. But again, yes, they can be included as part of your resume in the applicant tracking system. You may want to have as the last page of your resume, so that additional data is sorted and captured in the resume. Some people say first page. I'm a little reticent. hesitant to have you put it as the first page because you want that job title and your contact information to be right up there at the front, because those are the first thing that the applicant tracking software looks for. Because they have a field, basically what that does, what an applicant tracking system does is cut apart your resume. The technical term is parsing your resume, and inserts it into a database, into a form that they have for their database for that information. And they have fields for each area, for your experience, the number of experience. Usually they have experience, maybe have 5 or 6 fields that can be filled in. Again, they look for the company name, the job title, the dates, and what you did there. So that's how it's sorted by that. But again, cover letters, again, that's the reason I suggest using perhaps the cover letter that has a table letter. Identify the requirements on the left side in the letter in the middle section, and how you match up in the right section. How you match up bullets 1, 2, 3, if you will, underneath your initial paragraph.
Thank you.
I've got a question. What about months on a resume? Do you only want years, or do you want to put months and years? Again, as a recruiter, I'm not concerned with months so much, because if you look at my resume, I have a big gap in 2002, 2003, 2004. Because I was employed by that time with Siebel. I was laid off in July of 2002, hired back on contract in January of 2003. That contract ended, and then I was hired again at the beginning of 2004. So I just show years, though all those years are just for one company, even though there's a gap in there of about 18 months. So you need to have months. You'll need to have the months. You'll need to know those when you're filling out an application. But as far as on a resume, just put down years. That was a question that popped up yesterday in the resume class. And yep, here, another question here.
Whenever there is a gap between jobs, I know that on LinkedIn, it's recommended that we put our volunteer work. Is it recommended to do it on the resume as well?
Can't talk without the mic.
One of the reasons I suggested for people who've been out of work or have gaps is a hybrid type resume, is that way that you can talk about your accomplishments. What have you done? What are your areas of expertise first? And that's at the top of your resume. At the bottom of your resume has the dates. So that's a way to omit that gap, if you will. Other way to do the gap is, what have you done during that gap? Have you sat back and watched TV? Have you cared for an elder parent, sick kids? And what have you done in that time? A lot of us have at least done something online during any gaps in our employment. You may have taken contract assignments. You may have done volunteer work. Volunteer work can be included. If you look at my resume, some of the work on my latest resume shows I was with MEG, Mid-Level Executive Group. I'm still with them, working with them on Thursday mornings. That's 2 hours on a Thursday morning. And that's once a week for 50 weeks a year. That's on my resume as something that I do on a regular basis.
So, it was interesting. Over the years, I've only seen 1 or 2 people, but they actually put down that they were responsible. They were caring for a parent, and they did it for 2 or 3 years. But they also listed a few bullet points: scheduled all medical appointments, responsible for paying all the bills, and listed some just basic skills that we all do. Listen, we all have parents that are aging. If you haven't gone through it, and if you haven't gone through it, you will go through it. And, it's something you can do if you've got to take off time to do that. Any other questions from somebody?
Hey, Locke and Jeff, it's Rosina.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Locke, always for great presentation and great detail. In the chat, I had put in the question, when you created the table cover letter so that it goes to the ATS, did you create that using Word, Excel, or some other software? How did you create the table, basically?
When you're in Word, if you go to the top, there's I can't remember where it is on the toolbar. It's an insert, and then you can choose the size, the number of lines in the table, the number of rows, and the number of columns. I usually do 2 and 2, so
Okay.
it's a square. And then the top line is the company's name, and then the right side of that is your experience. The second line is the company's experience, what they're looking for in terms of requirements or qualifications, and then how you match up to that. You don't have to match 100%, but what have you done that's similar? Again, to show them, I worked with somebody yesterday about that. and talk to her. Well, she has not worked with this particular applicant tracking system for an HR job, but she has worked with 3 other applicant tracking software packages. So that's something that she could do. What has she done with social media? What has she done on Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter, some of the other things to attract people? Because those are tools that recruiters are using. Well, she's used LinkedIn for hiring. That's one of the social media tools. She may not have all of them, but she shows that she's not a dinosaur. That's what companies are looking for, that you kept current with your skills. That answer your question, Rosina?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. And, when you're talking, with the amount of skills you want to put on T cover letter, I would be careful. Maybe 4 at the most. I don't know if I want to do 5 or 6. I think, what do you think are the 3 or 4 or 5 most important things that are on the job description when you take a look at it? And that's what you want to just match up. You're looking for this, I can do that. Make it easy for somebody who, like Locke said, a lot of people in the recruiting business, if they're working for a company, they could be the first people out of college and they don't really know what a project manager really does. They're just given a job description, said, find me 5 people who can do this job. Also remember, when you do get that phone call and they bring you in for an interview, everybody who's being brought in has the skills to do the job. So if you think about it, everybody can do this job. So when you're going to an interview, it's what's going to set you apart. How are you going to fit into the job? Do they like you? Do they see you fitting into their organization? So remember, everybody else who gets in for the job has those qualifications.
On the table, I do that regularly. If I don't provide it to the customer or the potential employer, it helps me prepare for the resume or the interview, because I'm looking at each individual thing, and I can even put star stories down there. Now, I'm in the middle of an interview process with a company. The recruiter sent me the job description. I was creating this table, and then I went to the company website and looked at that job, and the job description was different. It covered a lot of the same stuff, but the job description was a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. There's a little bit more playful the way they wrote it. So I changed my matrix to include a little bit more playful answers. And in the course of the interview process, when talking to people, they approach the job as a team and they want to have fun. And so I made it clear to them that I understand that, I appreciate that, I can fit right in with that kind of team. And as part of the interview process, I provided a lot of those tongue-in-cheek type answers, and it was well received. And I have, if you want to see a table, I have examples that I can give you.
Thank you, Jim.
The other thing about that is that you want to have is, Jeff mentioned the 3 things the recruiters look for. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? And that's your qualifications. Most people that get invited for an interview have those. The other thing is a cultural fit. Okay. How do you fit with the culture? There's a company here in town that works in consumer products. Again, most of their workforce are under 40. Those of us who are over 40, like me, probably wouldn't be a good fit for them. Now, could I do the job that they have if it were in recruiting? Probably. I mean, I'm a good recruiter without being too egotistical. So that's what you're going to do. The other thing about differentiating yourself in terms of skills is have some of those star stories. What have you done as an example? If they were asking me about what I've done in recruiting, what about college recruiting? You didn't mention college recruiting. Well, when I was with the system, I reestablished our college recruiting program, contacted 17 schools. We went for campus visits for their job fairs and then scheduled it, campus interview schedules, interviewed about 250 students, brought in 50 for interviews. We hired 40 of them. So that's a star story that you can give right off the top of your head, because you know those examples because they're part of your life.
Also, for your resume, for every bullet point you have on your resume, you need to have a star story. You need to have a story ready to go. I think it's real important. I believe, get an index card, and the very top line, you put down what your bullet point is. And then down the side of the card, put STAR or RATS, depending which way you want to go, first or last. And then put one line. Here was the situation. Here was the task. Here was the action I took. What did you do? It's not what the group did. It's what did you do for that project and what was the result? And then you can use these like flip cards. If you're in, back in school, my daughter used to produce flip cards, to study for a test. It's the same thing. You're just studying. But by writing something down and handwriting it, not typing it, even if my handwriting is horrible, but by writing it down, you have in your brain, you've thought about it, you've written it down physically, you've mentally seen what you wrote down, and it sort of buries into your brain. It'll register a little bit better in your brain than just sitting there and typing something down. And then you've got these flip cards that you can take with you wherever you go. If you're at a stoplight, you can sit there and just go through a couple of them as you're driving there. When you get to the interview, of course, everybody gets there at least a half hour early. You're sitting in the parking lot and you can sit there and flip through the cards, just sort of remind you of the star stories and what's going on here.
An additional advantage to doing that is for a particular job, like technical sales or engineer, the job descriptions are very similar. So if you do that once or twice, they're going to apply to a lot of different job descriptions. You have to tweak it a little bit for a particular company, like one in my instance, they're looking for RF engineering and microwave. Well, I have both of those experiences, so I'm able to elaborate on those in my star stories and in the matrix that I come up. If somebody's looking for batteries, then I head in that direction because I have that experience as well.
One other thought about follow-up on interviews in terms of, I mentioned the table letter is something that I totally recommend because it tends to get read. It's easy to read. It's not too long. As a follow-up letter, when you're after you've had your interview and you haven't heard anything. I had two people on the networking call I was on yesterday. I suggested that they follow up with one of the new, because the one candidate had been interviewed 6 months ago and he was now a candidate again for the same job. I said, well, why don't you follow up with what the current job requirements are, because some have changed, and how you match that up as a reminder to the hiring manager of what you've done. So that was one way to do that, as a follow-up to that situation. Jeff?
Any other questions? Yes. Oh, Rosanna, you still have a question? I see your hand still up. I may need to just put it down here for a second. Okay, hold on. Question here.
How many times do we follow up? And is it appropriate to change who we follow up with during that process?
It's your question. How soon should you follow up? Is that your question? How often? Okay. Well, one of the things about interviews, and one of the last questions you have when they ask you, do you have any more questions? You always have to have a couple of questions. One of those questions, where are you in the interview process? Okay. And how am I doing as a candidate in that? And if they say, well, you're a 10 out of a 10, say, well, let's try and close things up today. I'm ready. Okay. But the other thing is that you can ask, okay, when is it appropriate to follow up? We anticipate finishing the interviews next Friday. And you can ask, well, can I contact you or call you next month, a week from Monday? Again, if they say yes, they've given approval for you to call. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to take the call. Okay. But you can call them and you've given approval. And that's that. I would not follow up something. If they say they're very interested and you haven't heard in a week, then definitely time to follow up, and then follow up with them. When would be a good time to follow up for the next call to find out where you are, what the process is.
I think you keep following up until they get a restraining order against you to tell you to stop doing it. Okay. I mean, that's the key, once a week, once every 2 weeks. I mean, at some point they're going to say no, and what's the second best answer you can get to on a job interview is no. The best answer is yes. Second best answer is no. The answer you don't want is, well, we haven't made a decision yet, or it's still going on, or it's still happening. So
one additional thing about that, even after they've made a decision and said, no, we've moved on to another candidate, it's definitely appropriate to contact them in 4 to 6 weeks to find out how the candidate is done. I've had candidates when I was a recruiter, had my own recruiting firm, and were there for 90 days and quit. And fortunately, I had a backup candidate for the position, interviewed, and 2 weeks later, she filled the job that the guy quit for. So again, people quit. They may not work out. I had another VP that interviewed for an VP of HR, and they hired a local candidate in Houston. She lasted 6 weeks. They called him back and said, would you have any interest in it? And he said, when can I start? Because they'd been through the interview process and the negotiations and all those kind of things. And he started a week later. Now, he didn't move to Houston, thankfully. He stayed in Dallas because that job only lasted 9 months before they went bankrupt. But he was there. He got a job for 9 months out of that.
Yeah, and we've had people out of this group too. The same thing has happened. You know, I will say follow up 60 days after your interview. You know, just how are things going? I'm still interested. Any new jobs at the company? If you've got that contact information, you've made those connections, follow up because maybe they don't like the person they hired. Maybe the person doesn't fit, whatever. So do that. I do. Well, yeah, maybe, well, if they didn't show up, you'd probably hear back from them sooner. But yeah, don't write them off. Just be nice. Just because they say no, be nice and follow up there. I do want to show real quick just a couple things here. If you're looking for like a T cover letter and some information, if you go to the careerusa.org website, go to resources, come down here to video and handouts. And all the handouts from all the sessions we do through the week are on here. But if you're looking for a sample T cover letter, a couple sample resumes, a sample bio, we didn't talk about biographies, simple one-page bios here. You can do that. You know, Locke talked about starting your some of your things off with action verbs. Here are some great action verbs, spreadsheets that you can use with a lot of information on there. So if you're interested, you can go right here. You can download those things just so to get a sample.
You don't have a sample. You don't have a sample of the table. Let me look at this and I'll provide you the example of the table.
You want to see this one here? Let's see if I can call it up. Well, yeah, sample T cover letter. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. Let's see here. T cover letter. Yeah. All right. Let me do a new share. I don't think it didn't pop up. Here we go. Yeah. Here's one. Here's one here. Sort of a simple one. You know, how you saw the job. You know, what they're looking for, what you're looking for, or you know, what experience you have, and at the very bottom, just a little thank you. Oh, the entire job. Yeah, send it to me, and I'll if you can.
Again, one thing, if you're interested in some of those, you want to send for a sample cover letter, table letter, it's in the presentation that I have. So it's lockealderson@gmail.com. I'll be happy to send you the whole slide deck.
Right. Anything else? Anybody else? I'll put Locke's information in the chat window this afternoon for everybody if you have any questions. All right. Well, Locke, thank you very, very much. We have donuts. Do we have an explanation of the donuts that just appeared? Hold on here just a second. For those of you who are not here, you're missing out on some Krispy Kreme donuts.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, I'm Nada Al-Graishi. Well, I landed a job, and this is why we have donuts. It will be my background is global supplier manager, and it is it's a contract analyst. So it's part than what I was doing, but it's good. It has a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses. But after evaluating, I decided to take that job, and okay. All right. Okay. And I'm very grateful to you guys here, to the Career DFW, to you, Jeff, and Walt and Ron. I'm very grateful for everything you do for us. I learned so much from this group, and I feel like I barely scratched the surface from what I learned. I really applied maybe 10% of what I learned, and I started getting results from implementing what I learned. And one of the big things that I learned was when you submit for a job, make sure that you have connections in there. And especially with LinkedIn, like I will look and see that I have a second level connection. So I'll go and look who is my first trying to get me in. And I find that people are very helpful, even if I don't have very good relationship with them, like I barely know them, they are very helpful in terms of helping somebody else. And I've been out of work for 7 months, and until I started applying this principle, I didn't have any interviews. So once I applied this principle, every job I applied for, I got an interview. And now I'm getting more interviews for jobs that I applied for, even though I applied maybe 6 weeks ago, and it's only now that they are reaching out to me. So this is a great principle, and thank you for the resume details, Locke. I changed my resume. One of the things is that I thought I had a good resume, and I learned from here, from this group, that it goes through ATS, and then if it doesn't have the words, you don't get anything. And then, for 4 months, I said, why is nobody interviewing me? Nobody is calling me for an interview. I have the skills for the job. So I learned so much. It's a great group. May God reward you 100-fold, especially that you are doing this volunteer. And I wish all of you the best. And any opportunity I can come to learn more. I would love to come. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations. So everybody here, it looks like there's about 3.5 donuts a person. So you can't leave until everybody eats. For those of you who are not here, I'll show you what they look like. So here we go. For those who can't, oh, wait, wrong camera. Hold on. You walk over here so y'all can see we have donuts. We have lots of donuts here. So we will, I don't know, we may not want to go to lunch because we'll just sit here and eat donuts, I think. All right. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments before we move on? Let me share a few more slides. We will get out of here. As I said, next Friday, our speaker will be Susan Holly. She's a senior tax advisor. She can actually represent you in front of the IRS if you get one of those dreaded IRS letters. She'll talk about your 2023 taxes, what you need to think about before year end. I know there's not, in years past, tax changes were happening all the way up until December 30th. And so sometimes you go, well, this is what may happen, but I haven't heard much about Congress hasn't done much this year, but there may not, I don't think there's a lot of changes happening this year, but if you have any questions, tax questions, please let me know. And I will get those questions to Susan for her to answer next week. Once again, as I said, this next Friday will not be recorded. So if you do need to watch it, you will need to watch it live. If you've not put your introductions into the chat window for those online, please do so we know you're with us. That way, you'll get the email this afternoon. We'd love to know what your target companies are so we can try to help you in your area. Career FW Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us next Tuesday. Ruth Lipsky will be with us to talk about LinkedIn job tools for job seekers. We do a LinkedIn presentation every Tuesday, of which Locke is part of it. Next Wednesday, Interviewing Wednesday, we will be meeting. We will be doing an actual practice interview online. It will be on Zoom only. So if you want to see it, you will need to watch it on Zoom only. It will not be recorded. So if you'd like to watch somebody else being interviewed, you can come join us next Wednesday. And then next Thursday, Heidi Torres will be with us, HR Heidi, to talk about how serving turns into networking opportunities. So come join us for that. This is the season to, volunteer. Well, it's always the correct season to go volunteer and help other people out because you never know who you're going to connect with. And that's one of the things Heidi will talk about. This session has been recorded. You will be able to see it on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, click on playlist. Yesterday, I think I posted video 578, I think. So there's a lot of videos there, but if you click on playlist, every video that I upload goes into a different playlist. If you select the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group speakers, where you see that red circle, click on View Full Playlist, and up will come a list of all the different speakers and topics, and you can scroll down for whatever you want. Just remember, any of them for the North Dallas group, you've got to go about 25 to 30 minutes in to where the speaker actually starts, because we do record from the very, very beginning. Come join us today for lunch, 11:45 Country Burger, 3115 West Parker Road, burgers, salads, chicken sandwiches, more, 3115 West Parker, the northwest corner of Parker and Independence. For those of us here, we'll be full of donuts, but come join us. We'll probably bring some extra donuts if you want to come join us for that. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great weekend. Locke, thank you very much for your time, and we will see everybody next week.